Hey guys, back on pens. 51 years today, but who's counting, right? Beautiful day, sun, sort of an east wind here. We're at the lower end of No Kill Stretch near Cherry Run, and high water has been coming down. It's about 650 CFS right now. Water is clearing up. A few trout rising, just a few flies, some March Browns, a few caddis, a few Hendricksons, and a couple Cool Gordons. But I got one really nice fish off the bank. It was rising. It was the only fish that was rising in the section I went after, and took a Hendrickson emerger, sort of a no refusal pattern I tie. 16 inches and beautiful fish, and made my day. So I'm happy to have one fish today. There's a few fish up here in the pool there. My buddy's up there fishing. He took one brook trout up there about 9 inches, and there's a few trout rising there in that eddy. So we're looking for situations like that are a little bit different because the water's high. As the afternoon wears on, and I think it's going to be sort of the edges of the flat water, the shallower, thinner water in places, special situations where you might be able to find a trout or two rising. Hopefully this will pick up as the day wears on, the sun gets further down, and maybe we'll see a few more flies. But I think the name of the game right now is don't waste your time flailing around, and move around. Look for fish, very subtle rises in spots, and then approach the fish and try to catch them. So we'll see what happens. See you guys. So on this day, April 25th, 2024, I eventually took 11 trout, 4 brown trout and 7 brook trout. So the tactics we used this day when the water was high is to look for trout in the thin water and in sections on the edges, and we found trout rising in places that we didn't expect, and we made a day of it. Just another point on Penns Creek is we're finding a lot more brook trout in this river. I've been fishing it for 51 years, and in the spring, especially April and May, it's not uncommon to get brook trout, and these are wild fish. Perhaps they're coming in from the feeder streams, but it's just a good testament to how a population can rebound, and who knows what the future will hold. Maybe we'll get big brook trout there in the future.
Looks really nice.
Yeah, it's a very nice fish. He's coming your way.
What's that?
There comes that fish. Very nice. Yeah. So we're down at Ingleby, and very close to the spot we fished last May. I wrote about it when we had a sulfur spinner fall, March Brown spinner fall. Some interesting fishing after dark. But this is a section of river where the geology changes from the Reedsville Shale, which is up here in the valley, to a place where Bald Eagle Formation spills in from, if you look down river from the right hand side, and it gets very tumbly, a lot of rapids, pocket water down there, heavy riffles, almost white water when the water's high. But this transition is right where this pool is, and my buddy's down there fishing. It's about 2:30, 2 o'clock, 2:30, something like that. We haven't seen a fish rise. A few caddis coming up. Yesterday we had a great day down around Cherry Run, above Cherry Run there, in the afternoon, where there was quite a few trout rising in the kind of marginal water that you wouldn't think they'd be in there. And since the water was so high at the time, that's where I was targeting, these areas that were a little bit, I guess, overlooked, where you can get into them, and had holding water. We got several that were 16-inch fish and lots of brook trout and a few smaller browns, but they were coming up to March browns, whatever Hendricksons were there, and not too many flies in the water, but really after 3 o'clock or so, they really started to show themselves. So we came up here hoping that we can repeat that, maybe a different section of river, a little bit further up river. River's down another 40 CFS, something like that. It's still in around 600, which is pretty high still, but it's definitely fishable. And just stay here all day, really. I don't have any expectations. But a section here, like along this bank, it's just deep enough. There's an undercut there, overhanging bushes go along for a while. I like that. I could see trout laying in there, and then eventually having the caddis, which I've been seeing on the water, get pushed over there, them get interested and start rising. And then also in sections where there's riffles, maybe just below that log jam over there, maybe further up, there's special spots where you can find fish versus the heavy water downriver, which I really don't want to get into right now. And I'm not that interested in nymphing right now. I just don't want to do it with the heavy water, but eventually I might get there and start nymphing again, or at least have a tandem. So I'm going to go up through here and bring a March brown, and I have a really nice Hendrickson emerger that can double for a caddis, and I'm just going to bring them right up along here and see if a trout comes up. That's it. So my theory kind of rang true here. I just saw fish rise right off of that snag right there. Right there. So I'm just going to work along the edge and bring that fly in there. I've got 2 flies on right now. Nice little spot. This is where you're going to find them. You got to kind of hunt for them, unless you want to just dredge the riffles and the pools with nymphs. Got to find the fish, and they're in little spots like that right now. The ones that are rising anyway. So I hooked them, and he got away. And you see there's a log there, and there's a stick under there, and he came up and went right under that, and I was fighting him. He felt pretty good, actually. Felt like a 12 or 13-inch fish in there. I was very surprised. I thought it was small. They're deceiving. But he came right up, took the Hendrickson emerger, and then went right under that log there, and kept working with the log there until he came off. So, but at least something's happening. That's good. That's a neat little spot.
Alrighty. That's a nice fish. You need a net?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big one.
Nice fish. Oh. That's a fish. Fish in the trip right here.
There you go.
Take a look at him.
Yeah. Put him in the water. That might be a 20-incher.
Oh, he's close. He's close. Maybe 19.
Yeah.
That's a thrill.
Oh, jeez.
I can't believe I got him out of there. Oh my Lord. That's the situations we're looking for right there.
That's right.
Very nice. Might be 20.
That might be a 20.
So I just hooked this fish off the bank over here, and I was talking about it a minute ago. I didn't think he was a small fish, but this fish is close to 20 inches. And I got him in a tight spot on a caddis, about 2 inches from the bank. And one of my better fish in this river. And the hunch here, I'm gonna let him go. Okay, guy, you take off. I wanna see you 25 inches next time. So the hunch here was that we could find fish in the edges and in the small sections, and this is a nice overhang of bushes, and there's a little bit of shade there, and a little bit of cover, and there's caddises being pushed over to the side, just a few caddises, not too many. I was watching this fish, and I thought he was about 15 or something like that, and I got in there, cast 2, 3, 4 times maybe, and maybe 6, and eventually he just came and pulled up and grabbed it, promptly went under a log, and he was doing his best to break off. I had to actually go into the area, pick the log up, and unwrap the line because the line was getting tangled, and then he ran downstream a little bit, but he was pretty cooperative after that. Very nice. So I think the moral of the story here is when you're in situations, look for something that's different, in these sections. Many fishermen just walk right past that. This is shallow. It's a few inches of water here, and there's a little run. And right now, these fish are in places like that. They're protected. Think of what that would be, a nice osprey dinner, wouldn't it have been? So he's up along the edge where they can't find him, and taking advantage of the little bit of a breeze and a few caddises, and was just picking them off. So yesterday we had success like that, and today very similar situations. Sunny, a few bugs on the water, and we're not in the heaviest water, the deepest pools, but there's situations to find. Just be very careful and just observe the right time of day, and you'll see a subtle little rise there. And so that was a memorable fish. Thank you for taking the picture of me. Yeah.
It's gonna cost you.
Cost me? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Cost you.
So just send me the bill. All right, see you guys. So where does a 20-inch fish live in a section of stream like this? If you look at my feet, I'm in maybe 8 inches of water. And there's a little bank here and a little run right under the bank, a little bit undercut with some logs and some cover. That's where a 20-inch fish lives, right here. Right next to that log there. And it's amazing how you can find fish in places like this. When you talk about overlooked water or unique situations, this is a perfect example of that. Perfect example. You think of a big deep pool and they're in there. Well, this guy is not living there at all right now. He's in a really kind of diminutive spot on a shallow, and he was nice enough to let me catch him with a caddis right there. Took a quiet approach, and I put the right caddis on. Made like 3 or 4 casts, and eventually it went right in where you're supposed to be, and he just sucked it in. Took me under the log, wrapped the line around. I had to go in and free the line, and then he went downstream, like I said before. But this is the kind of water that you want to look for in situations like this. Water's a bit high, it's spring, they're in places that they won't be in the summertime, and he's taking advantage of that run there where the caddises are coming through, and unique situations. So I think we'll continue talking about the theme here of looking for the unexpected when it's hard to catch fish at other places because the water's high, and we're just kind of working up through here. It worked so good yesterday down around Cherry Run, and so far we are hunting trout in unique situations. Had a hunch, came up here and was rewarded with one of the best fish. It was close to 20 inches. Beautiful fish too. So I want to add a little bit more context to this trip and the conditions that was found and some of the tactics that we used to find fish and have a relatively successful trip. Back in the beginning of April, there was a tremendous amount of rain. The river went up to 6,000 cubic feet per second, which is a very high, close to flood stage. Pretty much blown out, and it remained very high off color for a couple of weeks, and then we had another rain and it brought it up again. And if anybody knows Penns, it drops incredibly slow, and it would take a week just to get to a point of you can even get into the river. And our trip was sort of at the tail end of that period of time when the river was dropping. And I was talking to some people who went up the previous weekend, and they were just not quite there at the time when the river was in good shape. Not sure how many fish they caught, but it was probably 1,400 CFS dropping. And I think by the end of that weekend, it was getting close to 1,000 CFS, and it starts getting fishable around 900. So when I got there, it was probably 800, something like that, dropping through the 700s and finally down into the 600s. And it was getting there, but certain sections of the river were not wadeable, barely fishable, and but the water was clear. And what we wanted to try to do is to make some good time with the time we had up there and catch some trout, and that required us to change our tactics a bit. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but it really has to do with going to places where first, you can wade. Second, close enough to good holding water that the fish are nearby. Third, places that the fish might have sought as refuges from a flood, which happened. And also sections that were shallow enough at the time in this relatively high water that the fish were keyed in on what was floating above them, which were some of the hatches that were starting to come back. The March Brown, the Henderson, Granum caddis, apple caddis, a few others were starting to come back. They had been put down with the high water. And these trout were the first ones to start looking up and start rising. And it's surprising where you can find trout in a river as productive as Penns Creek. So when you're faced with high water, especially in the spring when the hatches are going on, don't get discouraged. You can still find trout. You can still fish to trout rising to flies. What you got to do is remember that the trout will change their behavior based on the water conditions. You also want to find places where the flies are close enough to the trout that they can key in on them. And also look for those unusual places. Sometimes trout will be at the edges in places you wouldn't see them in other times. So when the water is high, change your tactics. Observe what's going on. And there's a good chance that you'll still be successful, especially when a hatch is going on.
Here comes that fish.